Netflix's Star Trek show paid off a cool prediction from Voyager's finale. Star Trek Prodigy is far more than just a spiritual successor to Star Trek. Voyager, as the animated show, serves as a relatively soft sequel to the 1990 spin-off, and the former is full of details that impressively pay homage to the latter, as well as several Star Trek Voyager characters returning in Star Trek Prodigy. There are other more subtle nods to the adventures of Captain Janeway Kate Mulgrew and her crew aboard the USS Voyager, one of which is a direct canonical reference to Star Trek Voyager's finale. Mulgrew played her ship's fearless leader throughout all 7 seasons of Star Trek Voyager. Janeway's crew's long and dangerous journey home was filled with strange goings on that ticked almost every box in the sci-fi TV category. The Star Trek Voyager cast was rarely exposed to time travel, although they did have a handful of time-bending storylines. Star Trek Voyager's endgame brought the show to its conclusion with just such an adventure, and Star Trek Prodigy quietly acknowledges one of Voyager finale's smallest predictions about Starfleet's future. Starfleet's comm badges in Star Trek Prodigy match future Janeway's from Endgame. Starfleet uniforms and comm badges are often era-dependent in Star Trek, although they can and do also differ between ships. The Starfleet uniforms in Star Trek Prodigy are, understandably, a unique design. However, the officer's comm badge design in the show first appeared on screen in 2001, when an alternate version of Admiral Janeway travels back from the future to change history in Endgame. Her comm badge design differs from that of her temporal counterpart and the rest of the Voyager crew. Brilliantly, Star Trek Prodigy has brought back the design, establishing future Janeway's comm badge as the standard in the years that followed Endgame. Star Trek Prodigy could simply have kept a more recognizable design in play, as the show only takes place 5 years after Endgame, and comm badges aren't always updated quite so often. Star Trek Prodigy's Janeway wearing the same badge as her future self from Endgame is an excellent piece of fan service. The show could easily have ignored Star Trek Voyager's prediction and come up with its own design for the Starfleet comm badges. Alternatively, Star Trek Prodigy could simply have kept a more recognizable design in play, as the show only takes place 5 years after Endgame, and comm badges aren't always updated quite so often. Future Janeway was also much older than Mulgrew's character in Prodigy, so the franchise still had a while until it had to acknowledge the badge change. When Star Trek Voyager ended in 2001 with Endgame, it did more than just return the crew home after 7 years lost in the Delta Quadrant. It planted narrative seeds that would take decades to bloom. One of the most exciting came in a blink and you'll miss it moment from Admiral Janeway's grim future timeline, where we glimpsed a Federation transformed by radical technology. Now, over 20 years later, Netflix's new Star Trek series has paid off one of those predictions in a clever and satisfying way. In Endgame, the older Admiral Janeway arrives from the future equipped with tech decades beyond anything the Prime timeline had ever seen: ablative armor generators, transphasic torpedoes, and temporal shielding. It was hinted that Voyager's return and their discoveries in the Delta Quadrant catalyzed a period of rapid innovation. But fans wondered, would the Federation ever really embrace such tactical advancements? Would Janeway's future become the future? Netflix's Star Trek Starfleet Academy, set in the 32nd century alongside Discovery's far future era, finally gave us our answer. In the 3rd episode, when cadets face a training simulation involving a Borg variant threat, they deploy transphasic torpedoes, a weapon first invented in Endgame, to fight the Borg. The show doesn't just reference them casually. There's even a moment where cadets cite these Voyager's mission logs as the source for their use, directly connecting the diodes from Admiral Janeway's tech to the modern-day Starfleet arsenal. It's a subtle, lore-rich payoff that rewards longtime fans. Voyager didn't just bring itself home. It brought home ideas that reshaped the Federation's future. While earlier Trek shows often reset to status quo, Netflix's series leans into the legacy of progress. The line between science fiction and historical record has blurred in this new era, and Voyager's exploits are now part of the Starfleet curriculum. More importantly, it shows how Star Trek honors its past without being trapped by it. The return of transphasic torpedoes isn't just fan service, it's thematic. Voyager was always about adapting, evolving, and doing the impossible. Now, in a galaxy full of temporal fractures and quantum threats, the technology once deemed too